Hello. Can you hear me? Yeah, on the panel side. Okay. Great. Welcome everyone to this first edition of the DDD clinic, or should I say DDD clinic, like we say in France. This idea came from an experience we had last time when we did a panel related to hexagonal architecture. We had some kind of extra time. I think Julien, you was part of it also, with some kind of very interactive sessions between the audience and the panelists. So we decided to redo it again, actually. So I asked 4 people that I really like to come and play this game with the DDD for community tonight. I will let them introduce themselves in a couple of seconds. I just would like to do a special thanks to Krisztina for this last minute replacement. Helen was supposed to be with us and she had last minute constraints. So we hope Helen is right and okay. And thank you, Krisztina, for this really, I said, you received my request in the last hour or so.
So, that's half an hour, yeah.
Yeah, that's nuts. So thank you for being with us. Maybe a short roundtable. Maybe Krisztina, you want to start?
Thanks. My name is Krisztina. I'm software developer for, I don't know, 15 something years. I read the Blue Book in 2007, I think, and since then, I really don't know why somebody would want to look for some other ways or other techniques, because in this book is everything what we need to build maintainable and sustainable software, because it's driven by the business. So the business is right. And I hope I can represent Ellen in a proper way.
Okay, cool, thank you. Gien?
Hi everyone, my name is Gien. I'm from Belgium. I live near the French border near Lille, actually. It's not that far from here. I've been a software developer for about 11 years now. And ever since I started, I always wanted to look for better ways on how to create software. And I think 4 or 5 years into my career, I ran into the DDD Belgium community. And ever since, I've been very interested in everything that DDD has to offer. And lately, I've been more focused on how you can make better decisions as a team or as an individual when you create software. And I've been looking into decision-making theory mostly.
Okay, cool. Thank you, Gien. Julien?
Hi, so I'm Julien Topçu. I'm basically in Paris. I'm actually a tech coach. I'm helping people on different topics, including DDD. So I started to work with DDD in 2015, I think. And I also discovered at that time the hexagonal architecture, the behavior-driven development, and stuff like that. I'm also writing some blog posts on that topics, and the other ground field I like security. So I'm also a member of the OWASP Foundation.
Okay, cool. Thank you, Julien. Greg?
Hello. I'm an old software developer. I've been developing software for more than 30 years now. Actually, I work in many different areas, but I read the book in 2008, I think. It's a long time from now. And I had the chance to chat and to talk with Eric Evans after at a social event at some conference in 2009. It was really a very interesting time, I would say. And then when I read the book and after talking with him, I was convinced that this was something very important that was happening to the software development world. I felt the same way as when I read the the Gamma book, the Stern's book at the end of the 90s. It was something like a kind of a revolution, some missing part in my world, and I was really happy to see that someone had really thought about what I was doing on my daily job, and I put some words in things that I was feeling but I could not express clearly. So that was I was really grateful when the DDD became something concrete and something shareable, I would say. So since now, and I think maybe we would talk about it later. It's really something that was really missing when the software development moved to the agile techniques, to Scrum, to all the agile software development movement that happened in the beginning of the 2000s, and there was something missing that was that would help the developer actually take this new responsibility about software design that he probably was not feeling comfortable with. So thank you, Eric, for the book, and thanks for sharing this today.
Absolutely. Thank you, Greg. Okay, let me sum up the principle for tonight with you. The idea is quite simple. Basically, you ask questions. In the Zoom interface, you have some kind of questions and answer section or tool. So you can ask questions. I think that Julien has already started to drop some questions. You can either write questions or vote for existing questions with the thumb, like the Facebook stuff. So you can vote for them, and it will directly sort them for us. I will try to read them and to pick one, and then to let you ask yourself the question if you want, and if you don't want, I will read the question for you. It's open. So also I can let you allow to talk directly, or even to show your face if you have some kind of video and stuff like that. So feel free to share your video with us or not. It's up to you. Okay. You can also, I think you can also raise hand in the list of participants, attendees. So if you have something to add, or you want to make a point, don't hesitate to raise your hand. I think it will pop up your persona on top of the list of the attendees. Okay. So I'll let you process a little bit and shoot your questions. Maybe we will start with Julien's questions. Julien, I will allow you to talk. First question for you, Julien. Do you want to ask your question by yourself?
If you want, yeah.
Yeah, great.
So my team and I, we don't have much experience in DDD. I know a little bit about it, but I've never really implemented anything yet. What would be the best first step or first resources to design our next features? In fact, I don't think everybody in my team will invest a lot of time to read a book or anything like this, and I don't feel comfortable to teach them at this point in time what I know about DDD. So yeah, what first step would you suggest to start on for DDD in a team? We have a legacy code, and we have some new feature in the next year.
May I ask you something, Julien? May I ask you why you want to do some DDD, just for us to have some context?
Because I just feel it's a very good approach. We have some different business domains, probably quite a lot, because the project is to aggregate different type of domain in the company. So we probably have a lot of question about which domain is this logic, and I feel that we need this to clarify this in the code.
Okay.
So yeah.
Okay. Good start. Thank you. Who wants to start? Some reference, recommendation, stuff to read, but not so big.
Julien, do you want or should I?
Start if you want.
So my first real implementation start in a monolith was at the moment that I found a new part, a new tweak. We had a monolith of e-commerce. Everything was interconnected. It was very fragile. You never knew if you break something. And then we started to build out the reporting part. And this was totally different, and it wasn't existing in the company until then. And this was the moment where I said, okay, now we build this in a different way. And not only technologically, it was the same stack, but everything else was different. We created an adapter, and anti-corruption adapter. This is your first point. It is totally, if you're working on an existing code, you need an anti-corruption layer. And then you start to build following the DDD steps. And the first step is language. So using the right, so learning what language is used in this domain and building your code by the language and not by silos or databases or whatever, but build out of this language. And then you have the freedom because you have this tweak. It's not polluting anything or not endangering anything. And then you can start slowly without any, you don't need to be scared or something. You're building something new, or you are working on something new, and then you can start an experiment. And so the colleagues don't need to read the whole book. You just need to know when to start with the technique, like the language, like how to split code, how to decouple code, and how to speak, how to write your code. This is what would be my proposal. This is how I started building a totally new stuff based on DDD without endangering anything else.
Okay, thank you, Krisztina. Someone want to add something else?
Yes, I can. I think, and it will also answer another question you asked, Julien, that if you want to start with DDD and you want to discover the domain of the feature you want to build, you can start with an event storming. You don't have to know a lot of stuff about event storming, actually. Just the basic stuff. It's a timeline of events that everyone has to stick on the board. And those events are to be functional events, domain events. And with that, you will see that everyone will learn about the domain and discover, let's say, all the concept behind it. And you will build your ubiquitous language because terms will show up. You will also see that some people are using different words for the same concept, and you have to kill that. Make sure that everyone is talking the same way about the same thing, which is this is why we call that an ubiquitous language. Not only the reason why we call that an ubiquitous language. And for that event, you should have developers, your product owners, and experts of the domain. That's really important. Sometimes you don't have those people, but I would say that's a better option if you can reach them. And then you can see what is the main concept of your domain. And basically, that would be your domain aggregate, if you know DDD. It's the main entity you will have to persist and do operation on that. And basically, if you start to modelize your domain in your code with all the terms you discovered with your event storming, you will have to determine if it's an entity or a value object. So maybe you heard about that if you read some stuff already on the topic. And you will build your domain services, your feature around it. And I would say that's the first step you can do with domain-driven design. Like said Krisztina, if you do that in an existing legacy, make sure that this is really separated from the rest of the legacy. And if you have to interact with your new code and the old code, make sure to set up what we call an anti-corruption layer to make sure that DDD will not be, let's say, you won't have any leaks from the legacy from technical parts in your core domain. And then you can iterate, decommission the rest of your legacy and put iteratively new features in your core domain and so on and so on. If I have a last thing to say about that, if you need a resource, I think there's something that is called DDD Quickly or DDD Easy. It's a PDF you can find on the internet, which is a really good sum up of the Blue Book. I think it's quite long anyway. I don't remember, it's a 50-page or something like that, but it's not the Blue Book.
Yeah, there are, I think, like 2 tiny books available online right now. One is from Eric Evans himself, and I think the PDF is indeed available for free. DDD reference book or something like that. It's really tiny. And the second one is from Von Vernon, which is DDD distilled. It's not available for free, but it's like also a very tiny book with the key concepts that you can look through, and you don't have to read the entire large book. To answer your question, perhaps I will go a different route and tell you what not to do as someone. I have been in your position multiple times, and in my enthusiasm, I've always, tried to sell DDD and do it, full blown and try to convince the entire team. And that has been my experience that doesn't really get you anywhere. So the best that you can do is sort of, see for yourself, learn a bit about yourself, like the value objects, the entities, and add it to the code. And then by going through the code, show other people what it could do for you. And start small as possible and not try to sort of go like, and now we have to do DDD, the Big Bang approach. It's been my experience that never works.
Let me adjust something. When you no, Greg, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, okay. Just to add a little thing, to me, if you start DDD, you don't have to learn a lot of techniques. It's not about techniques or software components or framework or anything like that. It's not even about the building blocks of DDD. It's first about a mindset. You have to keep in mind that your software will be, let's say, correct, will be aligned with your users' needs if your software itself is aligned with its needs. So every time you have a decision to take, it's about decision making. It's about it's a lot of little things when you have to take a decision where to split your code, what direction is the dependency between 2 software components, how to name a class. Every time you have to make a decision about these little things that will shape your software with the business. And your ubiquitous language will build itself. It will be built upon these little decisions. It's a lot of little decisions that you take. And first, you just share this mindset with the rest of your team. And then maybe you will have to, you will try and use the building blocks and all the stuff that's in the book. But really, the important part is all about software architecture. You know, a good definition of your components, of your functional components, of your packages, of your classes, and how they are named, how they are dependent from each other to each other, and so on. So that's not very DDD. That's more like software architecture pattern, but it's the most important part in the DDD, I would say.
It is the guideline because you
guideline, yeah.
Every time ask yourself, okay, where belongs this behavior, and you have an answer because you think about the business, and the business will say where it belongs, and then it is a big help. There's a huge help because we have to take decisions every half an hour, and how can we know it is right or how long it takes until it's broken? And this is where DDD is the greatest, because it says, if the business says it belongs here, then you can be sure that tomorrow the business won't change 100% and will throw over everything.
I would add maybe first thing is to find out what's really important for the business, to find out the value, what really matters to the business. As software developers, we often don't know, we don't have enough context to understand what's really important and what's not. Sometimes we think this is important, and for the business or for the development of the company, it's not really. So first is to understand the whole picture and to understand what's really matter regarding to the competitors and things like that. And then you can focus on what has been said, like on the language. And I would say just simply by putting the proper names, like they said on the panel before, proper names, and to realize when one concept is sharing among two different kind of people or things like that, what it will depend on the context. Just putting that awareness into your code, mail, database, data model, DTOs, and whatever. It would be a good start, I would say. Not putting yourself the pressure on knowing all the patterns and the everything belonging to the DDD Blue Book. I would highly recommend you not to start with the Blue Book. And I will add to what Gien has said, this one, it's free. It's an introduction. It's the anatomy of domain-driven design. It's like an infographic. Made by Scott Millet. It's really, I think it's 10 pages, something like that. It's really, really nice as a first contact, first introduction. And also their book, Scott Millet and Nick Chun, Patterns, Principles, and Domain. For me, it's still the best introduction I've never read in terms of accessibility, understandability about domain-driven design. Scott Millet and Nick Chun book is really, really awesome. And it talks to every developer, I would say, I think. It's make a bridge between the concept and some concrete implementation also. Does it answer to your question, Julien?
Yeah.
We can talk about this half an hour, I think. So I had in between, I remembered a few other stuff which is important. It's everything is behavior and your determination, because it won't be the same as before, because you cannot just put everything there where it was every time, because you have to ask the business questions. You have to take care that your requests or whatever you're using for building features describe the value and not what to do, but why something to do. And this is a huge difference how developers start to behave, because you have to find out what the business wants. And the whole team should ask why I'm doing something and not it is red or a blue button. And this is the biggest problem what normally is, because the people are used to get something, you have to write this and that, and not to know why you are doing this. And this is where the software becomes broken, because you don't have the strategy, you don't have the vision, you're just building small stuff, which is not business, but some only shortcuts for the next feature. So you have to find out what is really the behavior, what is needed, and not the problem, what should be solved, and not the solution. You don't know the solution yet. And this is very hard to unlearn these old ways and start to think about the problem and not about the solution.
I think in almost every team, if you ask ourselves, what problem are we trying to solve, you may have some kind of lag before eventually have some answers, but not always. So yes, asking ourselves collectively as a team, what kind of problem do we want to solve is a good start also. Okay, thank you, Julien. I will ask Oussem. I will allow you to talk, to ask your questions, since it's on the top of the list.
Okay, hello.
Hello.
Thank you for giving me this speech. I want to know if there is an overkill to use DDD approach with mobile application, as I'm a Node.js developer, and every time I ask my my colleagues to work on DDD because it simplifies the work and it makes things clear, they always responding like it's maybe an overkill because we will think about organizing the domain layer, and maybe it is too much for our use case, because if you know, mobile applications today are frequently developed every 2 years or every 3 years. We have always the problem of connecting our presentation layer to the data layer, so we don't have really a stable domain layer. This is the problem, but the community is deriving to the clean architecture, as I know, and maybe we will think about the DDD in the future, but today in the mobile industry we don't hear a lot about DDD approaches. Is it really an overkill? Do you think there's some industry that would recommend DDD and other which do not? And thank you.
Okay, while we are starting to answer to that, may I ask you to think about what kind of problem are you struggling with as mobile developers? I would really like to have that, if you can think about it while the panel is giving some answers. So is it sometimes overkill to use DDD? People?
Well, I don't think so. I think it would simplify the work. Maybe we can use the approach like you said, or like your friend said, because the TDD is, first of all, it is an approach. We can use the approach only for designing the system, and then the other skills will come later. Because sometimes when you think about your when you're communicating with the product owner or the other teams like UI designer or UX designer, we don't have the same ubiquitous language. So maybe the DDD will solve a lot of problems. This is what I'm thinking about.
Okay. Any other contribution, remarks, tips?
Yeah, so it's not related, I think, to your use case, but I know some cases where it can be overkill. Basically, if you don't deal with anything related to the business, it can be overkill. I saw sometimes people using that have to build some services to do some integration between two systems, or to map one format to another, but there is absolutely no business logic to deal with. It might be a bit overkill. When you do some script to integrate stuff, you might not use that as well. It's my personal view on that. But in what you describe, I think it won't be overkill, because you have, like you said, it's not only the way of writing code. It's a philosophy, like said Gregory, and if you need to define a language between the UX, you, and perhaps your user and your product owner, you can start with some point of the DDD, like the Ubiquitous language. So this is not really hard to do, and it can help you a lot. From a mobile side, it depends the way you are doing it, but sometimes you won't have a lot of business logic here. But if you deal with it, you can use DDD. Even if you don't have a lot of business logic, you can use DDD and the tactical DDD to represent your domain anyway. And you said that sometimes you just have to change the presentation layer and you have to throw away the whole code. You can as well use DDD in that case and keep your domain safe from the technical changes by using patterns like the hexagonal architecture. I saw some people starting with that in front ends, for example. It's quite, I won't say that it's really spreaded anyway, but I think you can do the same stuff on the mobile side. With that, you will create a domain core that will be agnostic from any technical parts. So if you need to change something on the technical parts, like moving to, let's say, another framework or another stack, if you keep the same language in terms of, I don't know if you are using Kotlin or something like that in Android or something else, you can keep your domain anyway. So I won't say that in your case, it's overkill.
Okay, thank you.
I think what I don't understand what exactly is overkill. I have to build some servicing, okay? Or some interfaces. If I'm doing it with basic get and set and put and whatever, I still have to build something. If I'm building it based on the techniques, I build the same code. The difference is, or I mean the same amount or maybe less. The difference is the user, what the user gets is your interface. If your interface doesn't respond to business needs, then you didn't build the right interface. If the driver is the APIs what you are implementing, integrating, then it's not the user, and the user should be the driver. So even if the API behind or the database behind or whatever behind is not built in the manner, I cannot imagine a situation, okay, maybe a Trello board, or no, not even a Trello board. A simple view, okay, a simple view could be just a get and for each of the data, and that's it. But at the moment, if I can change data, I can update data, I don't know why it should be an overkill. What is why is so hard? I mean, you don't need to have aggregates and entities and everything. You just need to think based on business, to name stuff and to decouple and put the behavior on the right part of the code. You don't need, DDD is not everything or nothing. It is all the small stuff. What Thomas said, it's all, or Gregory said, Gregory said, all the small decisions and the small stuff, the attention, how you build something. And the only goal is, no, two goals, to fulfill, to solve a problem, which is not the API, but the user has this problem, and to make it sustainable for the future too. So why should be an overkill? Why, if somebody tells you it's an overkill, then let him or her explain it. What exactly is the part of the overkill? Why I'm doing what I'm doing more, but thinking about the business. So this is more, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Maybe you're creating a lot of files about because when you use the same DTO for the presentation layer, and you call it, for example, user, you will use the same class for associating for getting an instance of the user, and you will use it for the presentation layer of or the data layer. You will not have to create another layer for the domain. You will not have to create or the same because it's all in the it's all clear in the mapper. When you always have to map some object from one layer to another, you will find a lot of simple copy of simple.
Sure, but how far can you go with this? If this user will be always the same in the databases in the user interface, then you can offer an Excel sheet. You surely offer you have every application, every product have a unique selling point. Why it is better as an Excel sheet. So you will have to build some differentiation feature. And this feature will be more than an Excel sheet. So you will have problems, maybe not today, but tomorrow, displaying this user somehow else. And then here is the moment where it starts the code to be broken because you take some shortcuts or some decisions, or you are already so far, have so much code, you cannot change it anymore. This is what I saw in source code of 10 years. It was the representation layer was the same in the database, in the UI, and somewhere in between were a lot of ifs. So it was broken, totally broken. And we were not able to decomposing anymore. But it was something for the garbage.
Exactly.
And you don't want to do this, I think.
It should ring a bell to Gregory because for those that didn't watch it yet, I highly suggest you to watch the talk from Gregory. It was made maybe 10 years ago, something like that. Il n'y a pas de bon modèle métier. There is no such thing as one unique model, data model.
2012.
Okay.
Only 8 years ago.
Okay, only 8 years ago, and it's still very modern and it's still really valuable. It's only in French. But for the DDD audience, it should not be a problem. And the situations where you rely on one external model, database model also is a classic.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sam.
I just want to add, maybe I just want to add. In my mind, there's no place or no situation where the DDD is overkill, as you explained. You have a lot of decisions to make, and you still need this DDD mindset. Of course, you don't need the whole building blocks set of things every time, and that's overkill, definitely. But the interesting and important parts in the book are definitely not the building blocks.
Yeah, putting business at core of all your actions is a good start, I would say. It's
exactly.
Already doing some DDD, even if you don't bring all the toolbox. Thank you, Sam.
This is a very good sum up. Thank you.
You're welcome. There is one question at the top. Sébastien François, I will allow you to ask it, Sébastien. Can you please, the one related to the, should I code in French? Should I code in English?
Hello.
Hello.
I am glad to be with you tonight. I have been working in a little team. We were 3 developers in Java, and we practice DDD during months. But we have a little problem because we are French coders, and we try to make a glossary with English terms, but with French definitions. And finally, we have definitions with English and French terms, and it was a very messy thing. So how really can you make glossary when we are French?
What's the language of your business in that case?
Yes.
The end
French,
users, yeah.
English. The French, English, and German.
Okay. Your end users were French, English, and Germans. Okay.
Yes.
May I ask you what kind of domain is it, if it's not initial?
It's a domain. It's a medical domain of radiotherapy. It's for you know cancer. I don't remember.
Okay.
It's the domain. It's
Healthcare, yeah.
yes, healthcare, and we were making software to make quality controls of Linux. Linux is a special machine engine who throw particles beam in the body to make treatment. And,
okay.
oh, okay. So we sold our software around the world, but mainly in France, in Germany, and in other countries.
May I ask a question? Were there 3 different user interfaces for each language, or was it just a simple translation you were using?
It was a simple translation.
And why are you not using French?
Because
You wrote you're using English.
Because we were writing our code in English, code commands, Git commands, many things in English.
But you decided yourself, you are not a distributed team or something. You could switch if you want.
Yes, but we thought that
Why?
coding in English, it's a good practice.
The domain of coding is often English, but your user
Sorry.
We lost Gregory.
We lost Greg.
your user's domain was the specification of the. Sorry, do you hear me? Or
Yeah, it's going back. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Can you please repeat?
Yeah, I was saying that there's a domain, the domain of software development. Often the language is English in this domain. So everything that is related to actual software development techniques, it's common to use English. But your users were the users who you were interviewing to get the specification of the application or the information related to the use cases of the system you were building. They were speaking French, or what language were they speaking? They were speaking French.
Yes,
so
you are absolutely right.
So probably you should not
our
build.
experts, business experts. Sorry, our business experts are speaking French.
Yeah.
But they exactly know that their clients are mainly English talking people, speaking people.
So the core domain was explained in French. So you probably should have used French in the software to develop it and use the translation the business experts were giving you to translate the user interface. But if the main information, the core domain was expressed in French, I would have used French, I would say. But
okay.
Maybe not everybody agrees with it, but I think otherwise otherwise you have to invent new words, and the daily and the day-to-day communication you are having with your business experts will be in French. So you will not be using the same language you are putting in the code in your day-to-day communication with your business experts. So that's probably a long-term problem.
Mm.
So I have different experiences with that. When I was working in a team where the business was in French and the users also were from French people, the thing is that the developers have chosen to use English terms, and it was a real nightmare because it was not a straightforward translation. We were in a financial domain, and some stuff you just cannot, let's say, express it the same way. And sometimes, because it's financial, some concepts exist only in the French domain. They don't have any equivalent in English, because it's not exactly the same concept. You can see that in IRS, you can see that in a lot of accountabilities stuff, because that's a particular domestic concept. And it was a nightmare because we cannot match anything. So in the case where everything is in a specific language, including, like said Gregory, your experts and your user, I think there is no question for me. You should use the same language. You can use French, but there are some exceptions. For example, if you need to share your code base with people which are not talking French, might be sometimes you have to translate it anyway, because if you have external contribution, okay, English would be easier, I think. And when you're working in an international context, so in my previous experiences, usually, even if the discussion is in French, the terms that the business is using is in English, in the international context, I will say. And I will say also that if you have mainly users from a particular country, maybe you should use their language as well, if this is a language that you master. Don't use German if you don't know German. But the thing is, because they will open some bugs and stuff like that, and they will use their terms, and if you can't map it quickly, it might be a real nightmare as well. But I'd say it will be complicated anyway. So I would prefer to use like said Gregory, the domain language, let's say the domain expert language. And if you have the other aspect, like I said, maybe you can use English.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, so Hardy asked a follow-up question, like, could the development team be international in the future? And I worked for a company in Belgium, which originated in Italy. And at some point we got their code base, and there were Italian programmers, and the business was Italian. So the entire code base was in Italian, which at that point in time you get severe problems because nobody could read the code. So if there is an English term for it, and I think it was Julien and Gregory that also pointed out that if there is no loss in translation, then use the English terms. But if you do indeed have to translate to English and there is a lot of meaning lost by doing so, then I think it's okay to use the term of the language that you are in. Because if you translate it to English anyway, it won't have the same meaning for us anyways, because it already has a lot of context that we just don't understand anymore because it's English. So then you can just keep the terms in French or in German or in whatever language they are. That's mostly how I see it. If you translate and you really lose too much information, then keep it in the original language. But if there is an equivalent, then just use the English term. Because once, you might have to share a code base with people that at some point don't speak French, and then it's very difficult for them to navigate.
Absolutely. Thank you, Gien. Okay, is it okay for you, Sebastian?
Yes, Yes.
Okay, cool. Maybe while you are here, you have another questions. Can we consider that each class of the application service layer is corresponding to a use case? Otherwise, how to represent a use case in DDD? Something that has been pop up with votes also. So can we consider that each class of the application service layer is corresponding to a use case? Does someone have ideas?
Okay, maybe I can try. Each use case corresponds to an actor interacting, a type of interaction with the system. So it's an actor interacting with the system for a specific goal. That's the definition of a use case. So there will probably be something that will actually represent this use case in your software architecture. Maybe it's a class, maybe it's a service, interface, an API, a software component, a microservice. Maybe you can align. It's a good way to actually design your microservice to align them with use cases, for example, because it has some good properties as it's one actor interacting with the system in one way and using a subset of the business. So it's defining the bounded context in which all your the classes, the objects that are being manipulated by your microservice will be valid. So it's probably a good, for example, one microservice, one use case might be a good alignment, but it's not something. There is no final rule in this, and so again, it depends on the way you define your use case, but there will be definitely a counterpart of your use cases in the software architecture. Okay, and maybe it doesn't answer the full question, but
I would say not. No, we cannot consider. Maybe will be an exception to fit a use case in application in a class, but no user is using your classes. So a user has some needs, or a customer has some needs, or a user, and then it can happen that is a very small need, which belongs only to this class, or these classes are very huge, but mostly won't. Mostly is something complex, and so we cannot consider. It can happen, but I think it doesn't have anything to do. It can be a lucky situation, or your microservices, or you're using microservices, not classes, and this is the better way because they have a responsibility, and they should fulfill this responsibility, nothing more. Then it can be a small use case which is only for this part, like single sign-on or something. Even this would have two different parts maybe, but to mapping it directly, one use case to one class, I don't think so. So I would go further as Gregory and Krisztina.
Okay, I wouldn't say one class. I would, as I just said, one software component probably, because why I say that? Because DDD is about aligning the software on the business, and a good way to map actually the business is to identify the use cases, and of course the whole use case will not be implemented as is in the software, but it's cover the whole needs, the whole business needs. You should use a use case. I mean, use cases are good tools, simple use cases. I wouldn't say the full use case terminology that is used in UML, but simply an actor and a business goal, which defines well a use case, and you can actually cut the whole set of needs that you will implement into your software into use cases, and it might be a very good guideline to your software architecture to align this software architecture on the use cases. And it helps you define the dependencies between the software components also, because the use cases depend on each other in a defined way that can be expressed by the business. And so I think it's a good guideline. But I wouldn't say one class, one use case, definitely. But one software component, one use case, yes.
Would you say that an acceptance test would be a proper fit for illustrating a use case? Because during a use case, there is the naive version of a use case. It's very simple. It's I send a command to my system, which provides me the intention of the end users, and the system is doing something. But in use case, you can have some kind of round trip, chatty interactions between the end users and various parts of your systems, or various ways to ask questions. So I have the feeling that acceptance tests, illustrating all those round trips and things like that, may be interesting for use case. What do you think?
Yes, I agree.
Yeah, set of acceptance tests.
Yeah.
And basically, it becomes true when you are using BDD with DDD, because with BDD you have this double loop, and you are acceptance test driven, and usually you start with your feature and your use cases. So that's particularly true in that case, I think.
Sebastian?
Yes.
Does it answer to your questions? Not really.
Approximately. Maybe I should have to develop more my question, because for me, a use case, for example, is, as you said, is to send a command, is, for example, to place an order. Place an order it's a use case with different scenario, nominal scenario, alternative scenario, and error scenarios. I'm not sure that in one class we need to put many use cases. It was my question.
I think it's the wrong direction, because a user don't want to place an order. A user want to buy something. The way through this process, or in this process, is to place an order. So you have to go through these steps, but actually the user don't want this. And if you switch how to see things, then this is only a small part of the way to buy or to sell something, and then you don't even put this question, because it doesn't matter. It is not important if it maps one-to-one. It is important if it's not broken, or it's the cohesion is the right one. So all parts of code belongs together, which are moved together or changed together, and you decouple stuff which is not belonging together. So you don't put this question at all. It's not the driver. The driver is what is the problem? What has the user for a problem? What I want to solve? And his problem is not I want this order placed. I assume now. So he wants to buy something.
I agree with Krisztina. In fact, you are not really in the production code representing the use case itself. For me, in fact, you are representing the end user feature, and the use case is expressed by your acceptance tests. Because in fact, a use case, in a way, is a flavor of your feature that depends on the way the user or the persona, it depends sometimes on the persona, is interacting with the feature. So you said, for example, errors. So errors, in fact, is just a flavor of your feature. If it don't give you the right, let's say, credit card number, in that case, you will throw an error anyway. So you won't represent each part of that, I think, in your code, unless you are using stuff like, let's say, maybe functional core, or here you will have everything in your domain that is organized with pure functions. So maybe in that case, you will have, and I said maybe, a distinct representation for each of your use cases, but I don't think you will, it will be easy to maintain something like that because you will have the core of your feature and you will have some branches so maybe the better way is to represent the feature itself. And the acceptor states will represent, in fact, your use cases. But I think people might disagree with that, but it's usually the way I'm representing this in the code. And personally, I'm not using the application layer of DDD. I'm rather like to use the hexagonal architecture. In that case, the feature is, in fact, an interface in the API of the domain. And then it will be implemented by a domain service and so on. If you want to know technical part of the DDD tactic, this is the way tactical DDD, sorry. This is the way I represented that. I don't know if it answers the question.
You don't use the application service layer?
No.
You don't have to.
Personally, you only use two layers, the infrastructure layer and the domain layer, in most of my context.
To match, you can use that, but
you don't have to.
Kind of that because it brings some kind of, let's say, technical organizational concern of your code. And what I like with hexagonal architecture, it simplifies all those stuff. Like said Thomas, there is only two worlds. There is the inside and the outside of your domain. And I think it's easier to work with that. And I saw a lot of people arguing the way they are to implement the application layer anyway. So it seems to be a bit complex to tackle, but personally, I never use that because I think it's a bit complicated. And if I remember well, the aim of that part is to expose, in fact, your domain layer to the rest of your application, right? I don't remember, so I think it was that.
It was a question that we had with my colleagues. Do we really need to make a separation in our infrastructure layer?
Between the infrastructure and your domain?
No. Between
within the infrastructure layer.
Between API controllers and application service.
But what's the problem you want to solve with that, in fact? Because, like said, I think it was Gregory, there's a lot of building blocks. You don't have to comply with everything in DDD. And maybe you will add some extra, let's say, accidental complexity by trying to use some layer or some building blocks of DDD you don't really have to use. You know? Yes. So you just have to think about what's the aim of the application layer and what it is trying to solve in your infrastructure. If you don't have the answer, maybe you
don't need it.
Because just we want to follow DDD concept by letter.
Yes, but you don't have to take everything, in fact.
Or I would suggest at least to use the things you understand, the reason, the driver, the aim.
Yes.
If you understand the value of that technique, then okay, go on with that if it's matters with your context. But if it's not clear, continue to ask questions among your colleagues and before.
Okay.
Yeah, the reason should not be the book, but the reason should be, like I said, cohesion. That stuff belongs together, which change together, and how to say it, anti-corruption, so that you are not you don't have your data details in the view. This is it's forbidden. But everything else, to know who is using your API or who is using your interfaces, how is changing this, how features, requests, or whatever is coming from there. So you have to build some anti-corruption there, but it can be a very thin thing, an API translation or something, a very thin automated mapping or stuff like this to be able to evolve your business without breaking everything or without being forced to do stuff. So you keep your liberty, your freedom. Answers 10 years ago, everybody said we have to create anti-corruption layer to the database because what if we change the database? So now I'm working with Node.js. We could change the database every 5 minutes. Nobody changes databases just like that. And if I do this, I'm changing the total style of the database. I don't change from SQL to MySQL or the same stuff of database. It means the whole behavior would change. It means I would change everything. And anti-corruption layer doesn't help me, or an adapter doesn't help me. The same with mappers. Same with frameworks. So you, just like Thomas said, if it makes sense, then, and if you think you will have a problem next Tuesday, then create this part. But you're not. I had the same discussions and make the same errors. I mapped everything 3 times. In the meantime, only if it's needed, only if it's the danger that you are forced to do something. You don't have the liberty and the freedom to evolve. Then do this other way. You don't need it. But not database tables in the view. This is the only thing which always break.
It's a very good subject you are talking about how we can do mapping between database and domain objects. Do you every time use mappers or not every time?
In which language? I tried not to, but as I said, I'm working with Node.js to map some databases. It's using a package, not a problem. But I hate frameworks because frameworks always constrain. You have always such mapper frameworks are powerful, and they constrain you because you cannot change them very easy. You cannot use a newer one, and you are forced to work how they work and not other way around. So it depends in which, what kind of database, what kind of language. But the answer always is it's never a good answer. So depends on from the question, from database style, from your source code, for how big, how many issues, how many tables are tables or just documents.
My heuristic in that case would, in general, I say I'm used to implement APIs most of the time. I'm not a front-end guy really, and in all those APIs, it's like it's often hexagonal architecture, and I've got some adapters on the right side that are making the relationships with the database. So I hide the technical stuff of asking the database and things like that from my domain code. My domain code is always asking business-oriented questions. Please remind me that guys, or remind me that order, as you said. And that's pretty much just what my business domain is asking to the external world. And then within the adapters, I can use whatever database I need to use, whatever thing. And in that infrastructure code side, this is where I can find some mappers if I need to, or so it will always go through the domain to the technical stuff, and then back to the technical answers to the domain, doing this kind of mapping. And but it's in the context of doing web APIs and things like that. There are many other situations. So what you will find is always getting back instance of domain objects from the viewpoint of my domain code.
Okay, so if you are using ORM, you are declaring all annotation only in the infrastructure layer.
If I'm forced to use an ORM, which is you have to test me a lot and to talk a lot with me. No, but just kidding me. If I need to use an ORM, usually it will stay on the infrastructure side. I will never have some kind of stuff in my domain related to the ORM. All the mapping will be done in the infrastructure, in the adapters and helpers and code like this. But I don't really use ORM very often. Sometimes it's just here when I go to a team or to because we really love ORM. On that topic, I would really highly suggest you to see a short lightning talk. Let me find the URL. I will share it into the chat. It's something comparing ORM to quick fast cake recipe, something like that. It's really funny. It's 8 minutes long and it's really funny. What is really ORM? Should we need it? Should we, etc. I'll try to find it. But anyway, it will stay on the infrastructure side for me, not intruded in the domain code. Anyone on the panel would like to share relationships or usage with ORM?
By ORM or just adapting the right. So yeah, so I think I agree with Thomas. You should not put anything technical in the domain because sometimes you will contaminate the domain with some technical, way of working on the so some technical way of working, and I stick it to the adapter itself. So I agree that there's a lot of problems ORM. I would say that for some classic stuff, when you just do CRUD around your data and the data is not really complex, it's for me quite okay to use that. I can understand that sometimes you want to go in the lower level and do yourself the requests because you have a better control and you don't have the magic stuff from the ORM that have sometimes, performances issues and stuff like that. But yes, I would say all that concern should be only in the infrastructure because it's not the aim of your domain to deal with that kind of stuff. The annotation and stuff like that, it's only technical.
I am completely agree with you, of course. But how can you modelize, how can you persist complex aggregates without ORM?
But you can have, for example, you can use ORM if you want. It's just that in the infrastructure, you have to map your domain object into your DTOs, which are represented by ORMs. You can do that if you want.
Yes.
But if you want to go in lower layers using your request, you can do it as well. It might be a bit more complicated to write, but it depends on what you want to achieve and why you're using a kind of representation of your DTO. Because sometimes it can be a real nightmare to use ORMs. It depends on the nature of what you want to do with your database layer.
So instead of using your ORM, you are using request, SQL request.
I will let Thomas answer about that because myself, it depends really on what's the nature of the interaction you have with the database. But I know that Thomas don't like ORM, so I will
Now, maybe I should indicate why I don't like really ORM. I don't really like ORM because before you had one problem, you need some expertise to know how to manage your SQL database or relational database or document-oriented database or whatever. And then we introduce ORM, and within a team, you need to have expertise on, I would say, Hibernate, for instance. That might be really tricky in lots of cases. So you need that expertise, and then it's never enough. There is always one case with performance issue and stuff like that, where you need to hook and to put some real SQL queries and commands, and then you need two expertise. You need the Hibernate expertise and the SQL expertise. So at the end of the day, you have two problems. A sourcing problem, and so reason why if I don't really need it, I don't use it. So you've been asking how should I do that? If it's a relational database, I may end up by writing simple SQL command and queries. That's it, and maybe to drive my model, if I can, in a way that fits my use cases. And in other case, maybe an aggregate is just a document that you can store in a document-oriented database, and that's it. End of story. You take your business object and you store it into whatever serialization format you want to use. It's usually BSON or JSON or something like that, and that's it. You don't have to really. The mapping is straightforward in that case. So, but it will depend on the context. It will depend either do you need relational capabilities for kind of request, something like that. And I will, if in the ideal world, I will pick the proper data store that may be a relational database, document-oriented database, event store, whatever, driven by my needs and my use cases. But this is the ideal world. Actually, when you end up into a company, there are existing stuff, there are existing technologies. Ivory towers architects that say you should not use that and you should this. So sometimes you have to do some mapping and adjustments. But and if all the team is really comfortable with ORM, I will adjust myself, but I will try to have fun with them by showing them the small talk that I'm looking for. I will try to tweet about it if I could not manage to find it before the end of the session. It's really fun. The girl is really good at explaining the problem. It's really fun.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, before using ORM, you should probably ask yourself, do you really need a relational representation of your data? That's exactly what you said, Thomas. In the ORM, the R is for relational. And in many cases nowadays, you don't require an actual relational storage of your aggregates or of anything.
Okay, I suggest that we move into the question made by RD. RD, I will give you the ability to talk with us. Can you?
Hello.
Hello, RD. You're talking
you
about performance. Yeah.
Yes. It was about a use case actually. When we have a client with multiple transactions, almost 1 million, for example. When we will load the aggregate, do we need to load all the transactions, for example, which could cause performance issues? And so is that a design issue or something else?
What is the problem you want to solve?
Actually, if you have we have a relational database, and we have clients that have a lot of
the problem
data.
of the client, I mean, why would you? what wants the client to see? he cannot see
okay.
million of transactions.
Yeah, sorry. Why? Okay. Why we want to store all of these transactions is because we want to generate alerts when based on different profiles, and these profiles are based on those transactions.
Sure, but what I wanted to say, the question is not you have to load or you have to read, because you don't have to do anything. You want to solve somehow an alert. It means you could have some jobs which are not loading anything but just analyzing your status or your current state to solve somehow else, but nobody wants to load a million transactions. Because you cannot. Nobody can read it. Nobody can do anything with a million of transactions. It means you need some other solutions like a daily crawler, which are looking what is the current state, and if the alert is coming, it's only a difference of 1 day, maybe.
Actually, the alerts are for a period of 3 weeks or 1 month, and when we have transactions superior to 1,000 euros, for example, we need to generate alerts. But,
I understand, but you could have something creating like a reporting database. So you run your stuff and saving the current data from today. And you run it tomorrow, and you want to run it only for the last day. So you have 5 transactions or 500, but not millions.
Okay, so when we are loading our aggregate, we don't have to load all the data. That's it.
If somebody wants to see all the data, you will load all the data, but nobody wants to see it. So the question is not because I loading the aggregate. This is not the question. The question is, what is my problem? An aggregate. I don't want to see the aggregate. I want to see a totally different accumulated data. This is just like reporting or accounting. I want to see a current number of something. It means I have a calculation every day or every hour. And this, I put it in a totally different table or database or somewhere else. It's another domain. It's not the domain of the aggregate.
Okay, so yes, I don't need this transaction in my domain. I just need alerts actually in my domain. That's it.
Sure, this is another behavior. I don't even think it belongs to the aggregate at all. It is like a read model with a behavior, not a behavior, but a behavior, a very important behavior, I think. So could be some unique selling point, a core issue, but it's another responsibility. It's not the responsibility of the aggregate to know its children or its children.
Okay, thank you.
Think about it like reporting or like accounting, like propagating this. Every time it's a transaction is saved, you have some money, I assume. So you could send an event, or you could notify another part of the domain saying, hey, I have new money for this aggregate. And this is reporting, and the reporting doesn't have your aggregate. It has a totally different model. And then they can accumulate this.
So yeah, I should consume the event that the transaction occurred, but I should then transform this event in something that is suitable to my own domain. That's it. That's the idea.
If you mean you as developer, yes, but you're not the owner. There is a business, a bounded context of this aggregate, whatever this is. Let's say an order or something, and there's a bounded context of reporting, which is seeing the things totally differently. The main core element in reporting are numbers, maybe broken down to some characteristics, but it's totally different as the order. Have a totally different view and need and problem.
And does someone want to add something, or I would probably add maybe you can design your aggregates to embrace your use case and your behavior. Actually, instead of thinking your aggregates like a data structure or concept, maybe think about what kind of use case do you have, kind of behavior you want your system to support, and then to design your aggregates to embrace and to sustain, to support that.
Okay.
Be use case driven, in other words.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Does it answer to your questions?
Yes,
Yeah.
totally.
Okay, cool. Thank you, Hardy.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Okay, answer live. What do we have? I see Julien is asking why DDD is not so popular nowadays, or not more used. What's your point of view, ladies and gents?
My point of view is that not so many developers are interested in business issues. Probably they should, but they are often focused on technical issues, and they don't want to deal so much with business problems, and they are very proud of being of mastering the last version of the last framework. But okay, maybe it's kind of form of mindset, and it's quite hard to bring them to get interested in business issues. Not all of them, of course, because otherwise we wouldn't talk together tonight. But okay, that's my point of view.
Yeah, I think if you look at, I don't know, like take past 10 years or something, I think there has been an enormous growth. Like 5 years ago, DDD Europe started happening, and now we have like 800 or 900 attendees at that conference. Gadinsky started happening. In America, there's Explore DDD. So like if you look at conferences, which often is an indication on how popular something is, if you have a lot of conferences about it, then you know it's popular. I think like it's still growing steadily. It didn't take off and it didn't conquer, you know, the entire development world, but it's still growing, and more people start to understand that, you know, in order to actually make good software, you need to know how to communicate with your business. So I think like it's not popular, perhaps, but it is still growing very much, and I think that's a very positive thing, and very encouraging thing as well.
Yeah.
I think I will add also that the hype is really something that today is driving the community, unfortunately. And you have stuff like DDD, you have stuff like extreme programming, you have stuff like BDD, and even test-driven development that are not spreaded like we would have thought, because those are really powerful tools, but I think people are more concerned, like Gregory said, about the new shiny stuff that you have to, you know, that you have to use because everyone is using it, right? And it will change anyway the way you are coding. So it's a new stuff. It's cool. And there is also, I would say, it's also easier to adopt a new framework than to adopt a philosophy anyway. So because you are challenging yourself in a way that I would say you have to go out from your comfort zone. It's quite true sometimes with a complicated framework, but usually you will drop them because it's too complicated anyway. And in those kind of philosophy, when you go, when you start to use it, usually you won't stop. But it requires you to start to think in another way. What is the software development? It's not here to please yourself with with the shiny stuff. You're here to bring value to a customer, in fact, to a user. And you start to think with that, naturally, you will come to stuff like DDD and other concepts that are here to help you to bring and to focus on the value. So, like said, I think Gregory, it's because many developers are just fan of the hype and that's all. So they just want to play with let's say technical complexity, I think. So, and there is also another stuff. I never learned that kind of thing during my engineering school. I learned that, like I said, I think 5 years ago, when I started to deal with user concerns and stuff like that. And I don't know if today we learn that kind of stuff in school. I think today, because I had some apprentices, I don't know if you say that in English, but apprentice, perhaps. And if you take a look at the programs, they will learn Node.js, React, and stuff like that. But the way you design a software, in fact, no.
Yes, go ahead, Gregory, you want to add something or? No, I would maybe mitigate a little bit what you've just said. Yes, there are a lot of developers, not, I would say, really interested in domain, but actually, I think it's not really the case. There are two reasons, at least for me. First is when you start your career, you have to manage the fact that often you have the imposter syndrome. You have to struggle with it because when you are dropping into a client labelized like an expert of this techno or this techno, you work as hard to hide your stress and your incompetence. So when you deal with that, you are not really you're not really open for discussions and challenging with the domain. You are like hiding yourself first to survive in that new job, in that new context. So one way also to deal with the lack of usually developers, we think we are not really considered by the business, and sometimes it's true, and sometimes it's like it's heartbreaking. I want to help them, and they did not consider me. They didn't allow me to talk with them. They think it's a waste of spending their time with the developers. Yeah, there are so many proxies in the middle of that. So it's like frustrating as developer sometimes. I experienced it. At least it was my testimony. So it really frustrating. And then at the very beginning, two drivers for me. First is to be better at what I do, mastering my IDE, learning my new language, and being able to work with other colleagues first. So my needs, my basic needs are not to be able to understand the business and the big picture. And there are so many stuff to learn on a daily basis, then I'm not ready for that. It will be after, when I will master my code, my IDE and things like that, I will be more available to go and talk to the other people. And also the fact that I feel not really considered as a worker, it may push me to become a specialist. Okay, they didn't consider me, they didn't want to talk with me. I will be a super expert on technical things that they won't understand, but at least some other people will realize and recognize my technical skills, and it will mitigate, I would say, my heartbreaking lack of recognition and consideration. I experienced it personally. I've seen a lot of people sharing it with me. So sometimes we became experts, not by default, but because we don't have the opportunity to do something else. So sometimes you have more confidence, you have more expertise, and then you can go and talk to other people like business expert or whatever, and to be interested in other areas also. That's how I see it. At least it was for me.
I think it won't work until the company is not realizing that they will be broke because the lot of startups are coming. They have the infrastructure solved, just get some cloud services. They have maintenance solved. They have payments solved. Services are there. Everything is there. So they have a small product and they build this, and they will come. And a lot of companies, they are now 10, 15, 20 years old, sitting on a monolith, totally broken because everything is coupled and everything is interconnecting because it's built by silos and technical decoupled and not driven by business. And this is changing now. I see it like here. It is crazy how every time everybody's talking. I have friends already using DDD as a newest hype, and the book is 20 years old. How can it be a hype? But it is at the moment, and I'm a little bit scared of this because hypes ends mostly in bullshitting or something or dropping. But my CTO said he's not a technical person. He said he wants DDD because he believes that this is the solution. And when more and more companies are understanding that DDD is not a developer stuff, it's not the aggregate question, not the transaction question, but the business question. And more developers says, okay, I have no idea how to load 1 million transactions, but I know how to solve an e-commerce problem, which is purely business. Then they will talk with each other, or we will talk with each other. And we finally start a conference, not only technical, but like Kandinsky, saying, hey, this is UX design product owner XP practicing conference. And the third part is continuous delivery. Just like Julien said, I'm not paid to deliver code, I'm paid to deliver a solution. And until it's not delivered, it's not existing, and so on and so on. And these all stuff are coming together now, driven by cloud, driven by Docker, driven by infrastructure problems are moved to other people, other companies who are very good in this, so we can focus on the business. And what Thomas said, yes, I learned it on the same way. I wanted to learn to code well, to design well, and then I wanted to know, okay, what's the problem? But you have to be able to talk to somebody, not hearing, it's not your problem, you are a coding monkey. I'm not a coding monkey anymore. I cannot accept a task beginning with a to-do. I have a post-it here on my monitor. Every request beginning with a to-do is rejected. I'm not a coding monkey. And if the people are starting to think in this way, I think most developers want to know, okay, what is this user doing? What is his problem? Why are we paid for? At least because of the financial aspect, because if my company is dying, then I'm dying with it. I have to change my job. So let's solve the problem together. And I think now it is coming because all the big companies are sitting on this monolith. And they want microservices and they are scared. How should I cut it? So look at the business. And so maybe we are coming finally to this solution.
And IT is often viewed as a cost center.
Yeah,
and not as a value provider.
And it has to change.
Maybe we need to change something, how we communicate, how we interact with others. There is something to.
But we're coming there. We are coming there because you see everything is computerized. Everything. 10 years ago it was, I don't know, 20%. At the moment we are two part of people, the people who are writing code and all the others who has to use our software. And this becomes bad if we don't know what they need and we build some technological part but not some usable stuff. I think we are changing and the people and the companies are changing and understanding this finally.
Yeah.
I hope so. I misread the question. I thought it says, why is DDD so popular today? It's more, no, I didn't saw it. And I was happy to answer it.
Okay, does anyone want to add something before we take Majed? New questions? Or Majed, I don't know, maybe I will allow you to talk. Majed,
hello,
yeah?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Good. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to ask my question. Recently, I was interested about clean architecture, and I was trying to find the similarity with DDD. Can we see that? Can we say that use case in clean architecture can be the aggregate root?
Does anyone want to jump on it? So you are saying, can you please repeat your question?
Okay, can we say that use case as defined in clean architecture can be an aggregate root when we try to find similarity with DDD?
How is defined in clean architecture? Can you give an example?
An use case, for example, I take the example of train reservation. I know that Thomas is an expert.
A fake expert. A fake expert.
For example, reservation attempt. It's a use case. Can we? It can be considered as an aggregate root, for example.
I would say no. I would say much more related to a command, to an intention of an end user to ask your system to do something for him or for her. But looking at the clean architecture, I didn't read the book of the old man about it. I'm much more fluent in hexagonal architecture. It may be pretty much the same. Maybe for me, it will be something like a command, or you are not forced to use aggregate. I mean, for me, if you have an API service talking the business language and be in interaction with it, either you implement it internally with aggregates or stuff like that, which are technical stuff of DD or not. I don't really care, actually. So I won't necessarily take the aggregate tool every time. I don't know if it's clear. So I won't make that direct relationship. And usually within your aggregate, you may have, or you may support multiple operations, multiple kind of interactions. So you may end up with multiple use cases tackling the same aggregate. For instance, this is one case, but
okay.
Maybe you look at the book from Bombern and this DDD distilled. He explains, he takes such examples and explains how he structures stuff. But I think this use case is only a half a use case. So I have an attempt, and then what happens? So,
okay, thanks for the answer.
May I ask you, why are you asking this? Do you have something that annoys you?
It's a simple thinking about use case can be easily for developer to be explained for the other in teams, other than tactical aggregate root.
It was a use case.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Look at that.
Thank you
Look
very
at.
much, Majid.
Yeah, have a
Thank
look
you.
at that book. It's not so long, and it explains very well.
Okay. Thanks for the answer.
You're welcome. Before we wrap up, I just find the talk I was talking about earlier, which is Christine Gorman. Hibernate should be to programmers what cake mixes are to bakers beneath their dignity. So it's a funny talk, 8 minutes more, and I really recommend you to watch it. It's I think you will. It's really communicative. Christine Gorman is really a nice speaker, very generous and funny. So either we can take a last question or maybe wrap up. We had one question about.
I think we answered all.
Okay.
So at least in the Zoom. I don't know about YouTube.
Yeah, no, it's I have the Zoom also. Does someone else want to add a last question or something? Can raise the hand in the audience. I lower the hand of everyone now. Maybe do you want to add something from the on the panel side about some thing you want to advise, to tip, to communicate about DDD and tips and tricks or something like that?
I just would say that we had several questions on the organization of the DDD layers and the clean architecture, and you should take a look at the hexagonal architecture if you don't have already. It's a really powerful pattern that will help you to simplify a lot of stuff. And by the way, I think it's Bob saying that yeah, hexagonal architecture is a pattern of clean architecture if you're interested about that.
It's a good match, DDD and hexagonal architecture. In lots of cases, it's an interesting match in order to properly protect your domain code from the intrusion of fads, IT fads, and frameworks and libraries. Yeah. Okay. Maybe I'd like to add something, which is don't feel afraid by Blue Book. Take it simply. Just put the business concern at core of all your actions, either to code, to talk, to interact, to model, to think about what's really matters to your business, what kind of problem. Invest the problem space. We didn't talk a lot about event storming and lots of techniques like this to invest the problem space before we jump into the solution space. As developers, we really love to jump too soon into the solution space. So maybe just by doing that, putting semantics and language at core of our software, understanding that the one word has not the same definition for everyone, and that may help you to split and to protect a portion of our systems, would be a really nice way of starting with DDD, and the rest, the aggregates, the entities, stuff like that. Okay, these are details. I would say, like, I don't know who said that earlier, but the mindset, maybe it was Greg, the mindset is really more important than the toolbox, to me. So I will, don't be intimidated by the Blue Book, which is a very interesting and nice book, but it's really complicated to read, especially for non-English native speaker like us.
It is like you said with Hibernate, yeah. Sure, I can use some tool, but if I don't understand why I'm using it and how I am applying it, I just generated some work, but I still will have a broken code. And this is elementary, essentially, to understand and to change the questions. We had today, I really enjoyed it, but we had only technical questions. We didn't talk about organization, about teams, about delivery. We touched a little bit BDD and TDD not at all, but we need all this stuff, and then we can start with event storming and build and solve problems. And our problems are not the transactions, but the rest. And this is a long way to go there.
Yeah. I will also recommend you, since we are kind of COVID situation here with lots of remoting and things like that, I highly suggest you to have a look at what Nick Tunes is experiencing and is sharing how to manage the expectation, of the business when we are all in remote. So there are lots of sharing actually. Maybe Gien, you experience a lot remote work. Is there kind of hint or takeaway?
Yeah, it's we did already a couple of meetups around working remote. So Nick and I actually have a workshop at the end of September, which is basically how do you do strategic DDD with bounded context canvas, but then how do you do it remote? So we're really trying to figure this stuff out. We made most of it public, that you can use it yourself. There's a lot in the DDD crew repository for that. So it is possible. It's still, I think, in its infant shoes, like because the whole current situation sort of, it was always said that it's not possible to do DDD when you have to work remote, and it was like, okay, but I have to work remote. So with since March, people are slowly realizing that, well, we'll have to find a way to do this remote as well. And I think we're getting there. There are some really good things available, and we have a workshop to help you with that stuff too. Besides that, I think if you have multiple time zones, like always communicate time zones. And really like share screens and use Zoom and make it visual, because it's very easy to go into the dialogue conversation and stop visualizing the problems and just have chats on Zoom. So try to find a good board, a collaboration board online, something that everyone is comfortable with, and try to use that in your meetings to still visualize everything. Is very important.
At work, we use a lot Miro to share visually. The importance when you are all remote is to have the share mental model, I would say, as much as possible, and it's something that I think very useful.
Yeah.
But yeah.
We have a concept board at work, and then for the workshops we use Miro. I do like Miro a bit better, but concept board apparently had better tablet integration, and that's why at the office we picked something else. Could be that Miro is already up to date by now, because they're really having a lot of features coming out.
Okay. We will share all these reference and links to you all together just after, either by Twitter or on Meetup. So you will have that. Okay. Time for me to say thank you to the audience, to the wide audience, to the attendees, first for their questions. Thank you very much to have played this game. I had planned 2 polls, but I think I forgot the first one, so I would just end up with the last one. I will launch it for those that are still with us. If you can just please vote, so I can have some kind of feedbacks. I would like to thank you also, all the panelists. Thank you very much. Really, it was a pleasure to be with you tonight. And thanks to Krisztina for this late join. It was good. Thank you.
Thank you, Thomas. Thank you for inviting us.
it was just my pleasure. So for me,
Exactly.
it's always just a pleasure. So we have some votes. 8 on 22 people has voted yet. Feel free, it's anonymous. I know it's Zoom, but I checked the anonymous votation option. Okay. So I will just wait 10, 12 people on 22. We'll wait 30 seconds for the last people to vote, and we'll share the results. Allez, come on, let's share. Okay. Oh, okay. We have more than half than the audience, so it's a quorum. How was your night? 62% learns of stuff, so it was useful. Cool. Some of them just have a great night, and we have Gien also. Okay, cool. And will you attend another DDD clinic event? Yes, most def. Okay. So just time for me to thank you all and to say take care. Have a great night. See you.
Thank you. See
Cheers.
you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Have a good night.
You too. Okay. I never know what to do to prevent from erasing the YouTube stuff. I think I just have to stop the meeting maybe, and it will be okay. Yeah, I will try.
Il y a encore du monde en fait.
Stop live stream. Yeah, thanks to your question from Krisztina. Stop live stream.